They were both undergoing analysis by Jung, so they were full of talk about complexes. What my mother was afraid was that he would never be able to make a natural and warm relationship, never having had one.
As he grew older, Michael became closer to his mother, a half-Polish woman named Dorothea. She was a cultured woman who instilled in Michael her own passions for modern art and design. She took him to art galleries, to archaeological exhibitions, and taught him to love foreign languages.
Michael Ventris was a superb linguist. He picked up languages extremely fast. In fact, it's almost extraordinary. He could learn a new language, it seems, in a matter of days or weeks.
He learnt French, German, Swiss German and Polish when he was under the age of 10. And as an adult, he picked up Russian, Swedish, Danish, Italian, Spanish, some Turkish and modern Greek.
When Michael was 13, his parents sent him to Stowe, a relatively unconventional public school, which championed the arts and the classics over the tyranny of athleticism. But even by Stowe standards, Michael seemed different.
He was an aloof, slightly amused and detached member of our own community who didn't make great friends with the rest of us and who regarded all of us with a degree of puzzlement and amusement.
He had a good academic record, but it wasn't brilliant. You know, one didn't look at his reports and say, here comes a prodigy.
There was something odd about him. For example, after lights out in the dormitory, at the age of 15 or so, he used to turn on a flashlight, and under the bedclothes, he would end up studying the few transcripts of Linear B that were then available. We regarded this as an oddity, but we didn't know that he was going to turn out to be a genius of the highest intellectual caliber.
Michael's home life was turning out to be as unconventional as his obsession with Linear B. His parents, never particularly well suited, were drifting apart.
In 1932, when we met them again in Eastbourne, they were now living in different hotels along the seafront so that they could meet on a bench in the mornings for chat. So if they were apart, they pined for each other's society, but if they were together, they hurt each other. He said they were like porcupines.
When Michael was 14, Dorothea divorced her husband. He died 2 years later of tuberculosis. Now financed by her landowning family in Poland, Dorothea and Michael moved into a brand new flat on Highgate Hill in London.
High Point was probably the most radical, elegant, refined modern building of the 1930s in Britain. It's a tall white tower, built in 1935 by the architect Bertold Lubetkin.
High Point placed Dorothea and Michael in the centre of Bohemian Hampstead, the artistic centre of 30s London. Dorothea counted among her friends the painter Ben Nicholson and the sculptors Naum Garbo and Henry Moore. She had paintings by Picasso on the wall, and Marcel Breuer designed her furniture.
If you imagine High Point as a kind of junction box of new ideas of the modern movement of Bauhaus, of radical art and philosophy and music, they all came together really through that building. So the young Michael Ventris would have been exposed to all this latest thinking, and it would have, of course, driven him along to want to be a modern architect, which of course is what he became.
In 1939, Michael Ventris's mother, Dorothea, whose wealth was dependent on family money coming from Poland, was put into terrible financial straits by the Nazi invasion of Poland. This required, in fact, that Michael be withdrawn from Stowe School.
By the time the war hit London, Michael had decided to train to be an architect. Inspired by High Point, he enrolled at the Architectural Association. His mother, however, had fallen into a deep depression. Her father, a political refugee, had just died. Her husband was dead. Her brother had been killed in the First World War, and Michael, now 17, faced military call-up.
On top of all that, I think she was very highly strung, and she was overwhelmed, I think, by the artistic world in which she found herself. She felt rather inadequate.
Perhaps you realised in the end how completely I lack self-confidence. The fact is that I'm simply terrified of people. I was in a panic that you would bring your friends here, capable, worldly people who make me feel like a fool.
In June 1940, Dorothea took an overdose of barbitone and died. The coroner's report was suicide while the balance of her mind was disturbed.
I think that Michael totally clammed up after his mother's death. I think he was the sort of man who bottled up his deepest concerns and didn't talk about them. I think he was, in that way, a rather complicated person.
Michael Ventris was a member of a generation, a very particular English character in many ways, who would have not have talked about deep emotions. You didn't talk about being ill, you didn't talk about being mentally ill, certainly. You just got on with it, and you bottled up your feelings. He did that for the whole of his life.
In the months following his mother's suicide, Ventris channeled his emotions into his Linear B research. He was spurred on by recent discoveries. In 1939, academics had been astonished when the American archaeologist Carl Blagan had dug up 600 fresh Linear B tablets at Pylos on the Greek mainland. This cast doubt over Arthur Evans's theory that Linear B was an indigenous Cretan language.
According to Sir Arthur Evans, it was a Cretan script and it belonged only in Crete. So what was it doing in Greece? And people started to doubt Evans's theory that there was no connection between the Minoans and the mainland Greeks.
Despite this new discovery, Ventris remained faithful to Evans's theory that Linear B could not be Greek. He wrote an academic article, which the American Journal of Archaeology rushed into print, hardly suspecting that its author was only 18 years old.
Ventris's most important hypothesis in his 1940 article is that probably the language of Linear